lost something like 70% of the wetland habitats.
We're right now in the process of tying in the Seymour source water to the inlet of the plant.
The Pitt River and the Fraser River are basically considered the fiber highways.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Timmer.
And I'm Dagmar Timmer, and this is the Sustainable Region.
Today we're touring the Britannia Heritage Shipyard in Richmond, located on the south arm of the Fraser River just east of Steveston. These buildings tell the stories of a multicultural community that lived and worked here in Steveston's early days.
Built in 1889, the Britannia Shipyards building is the oldest cannery building on the Fraser River. Today, it's used to repair old wooden boats and keep traditional boat building skills alive.
Boat building, net making, fishing, and cannery work all contributed to life on the Fraser River. Although this industry exists today, the Fraser is home to a huge range of industries. Up next, we're going to look at how the river is kept open for ship traffic as we investigate the sediment budget.
Presently, the Fraser Titan is dredging off Steveston Island. We're on a trailing suction hopper dredge, basically a big, ocean-going vacuum cleaner.
Dredging like this takes place regularly so that deep-sea vessels can travel upriver. But extracting millions of cubic meters of sand is not to be undertaken lightly. If done in the wrong seasons or locations, or in the wrong amounts, there could be disastrous results for both the river's ecology and economy. A hard-working group has come together to ensure that concerns like these are managed. This partnership is the Fraser River Estuary Management Plan, or FREMP.
Our role as a partnership and program is to ensure that the Fraser River has an environmental mandate, an economic development mandate, as well as to sustain the life and environmental habitat in and around the Fraser River.
One of the key partners is the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, which oversees activities that contribute billions to the Canadian economy.
Those containers are all full of the consumer goods that we use every day. Home electronics, clothing, all these things arrive on a ship. They're discharged at a terminal and then put onto either a truck or a train for local distribution or for distribution right across the country.
The Vancouver Fraser Port Authority is one of the partners that provide input and financial support so that FREMP is able to create an annual sand budget. This considers the amount of new sand and silt deposited each spring freshet, along with other environmental factors, to ultimately determine the allowable amount to be removed with no net loss.
We take out roughly about 2 million cubic meters of sand a year, which would fill GM Place.
The Fraser Titan has two hoppers, one in the bow, one in the stern, and roughly each one holds 1,200 cubic meters of product, or around 120 dump truck loads each, for a total of about 240 dump truck loads. When it's time to deposit it over the transfer pit, the bottom opens up and then the product just drops out via gravity.
Dredging is an interesting one. There's a lot of emphasis in FREMP trying to balance that because it's vital to the port, particularly Fraser Port. A lot of the dredging, of course, is out in the main channel that isn't as biologically important. It's more making sure that the dredging doesn't impact the shoreline habitats, and when we do dredge, we use appropriate mitigation such as scheduling it to avoid the big fish runs, particularly the juvenile runs, and making sure that there isn't a lot of siltation, etc. from the dredging operation.
The Fraser Estuary has been mapped and coded in terms of habitat and productivity.
It is a color coding system that outlines the habitat values in and around the Fraser River. Red being high habitat value, yellow being moderate, and green is low habitat value, and most projects can go ahead in that habitat.
We've lost something like 70% of the wetland habitats. That's through urbanization, through agricultural reclamation of the estuary, etc. So the 30% or so that's remaining, it's vital that we manage it effectively to support the millions of waterfowl and hundreds of millions of juvenile salmon that use the estuary each year. And one of the mandates of FREMP is to balance the development versus the existing habitats.
I think FREMP is a great example of where you see cooperative agreement happening, where a number of people organizations have come together with different interests and worked towards a common goal or a common good.
Welcome back to the Sustainable Region.
And our look at waterways in Metro Vancouver. We're in Richmond's Murakami Visitor Centre. This was once home to the Murakamis, a family who built gill netters and fished the Fraser.
They lived here from the early 1930s until 1942, when the internment of Japanese Canadian citizens put an end to their way of life.
"12 people lived in this house. Mom and Dad and 2 babies slept here.
And the other 8 children slept in 2 small bedrooms. Up next, Vanessa takes a tour of some new infrastructure that will ensure that every household in Metro Vancouver has the best municipal drinking water in the world. Tim Stevenson, chair of the Metro Vancouver Water Committee, explains.
We do have the very best, the very purest water that you can drink. And we are constantly testing to make sure that's the case. We're fortunate to have the very finest drinking water anywhere in the world right here in Metro Vancouver. And soon with the new filtration system it will be even better because we'll have no turbidity at all in our water.
Today I'm visiting what could be one of Metro Vancouver's biggest mega projects ever. I'm at the Seymour Capilano Filtration Plant. When completed, the buildings behind me will filter up to 1.8 billion liters of water every day. Water from the Capilano Reservoir will be pumped through a 7-kilometer tunnel to the filtration plant, where it will be blended with the water from the Seymour Reservoir. The blended water will be disinfected by ultraviolet light, chlorine, and then filtered. The water will be returned to Capilano via a twin tunnel. When the project is completed, about 70% of Metro Vancouver residents will receive this treated water. My guide today is Adeline Chin. Hi Adeline, I'm Vanessa.
Hi Vanessa, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Adeline is one of Metro Vancouver's engineers who's working on this project. So where are we right now?
Well, Vanessa, we're standing over one of the 24 filters in the filtration plant. Each of the filters are going to have 30 centimeters of sand and 1.7 meters of anthracite on top of it, and that's where the water's filtered through.
I understand, Adeline, that we're at this really interesting juncture in the project.
Yes, Vanessa, we are. We've had months and months of planning, and we're right now in the process of tying in the Seymour source water to the inlet of the plant.
So you're ready to go then?
Not quite. As you can see, there's still a bit more construction that needs to be done. However, this is the time of the year that we need to do this. This is the lowest water demand, and before we do the tying, we actually have to turn the source water off and drain that section of the pipe, which we've never done before. Why don't we go have a look? So Vanessa, these are the hoses that are draining the Seymour main I was telling you about.
So this is where the water drains from the pipes. And how long a pipe are we actually talking about?
Well, see that concrete building behind us? That's where we closed off. So from that point up to the dam, we're talking about 12 kilometers worth of pipe. And it's going to take about 72 hours to drain the whole pipe.
Right. That's a lot of pipe, and it looks like it's actually draining the water into the Seymour River.
That's correct, but before we actually the water goes into the Seymour River, we actually dechlorinate it so that's safe for the habitat. So Vanessa, would you like to go see whether we're tying in?
Yeah.
So this is the Seymour main. That's the one we're draining right now. And this is the pipe that goes to the inlet of the plant. And basically we're gonna have this big, huge Y joint that joins from that to this pipe. You can see in the middle, there are some smaller pipes. Those are actually electrical telephone conduits we actually had to relocate in order for this to happen. So we actually relocated around this way. Vanessa, you should really see where this pipe leads to in the inlet of the plant. Amzad Ali, who's been working with Metro Vancouver for 30 years, can tell you all about it.
So Vanessa, this line here that you see in front of me is the line coming from Seymour Dam.
And what about this pipe on this side?
This is the Capilano Raw Water line. It's the pump line from Capilano Dam. It's about 7 kilometers coming into here.
And so these two pipes actually meet here.
This is where they both meet in the back behind us here. And that's why it's called the inlet blending. That's where they blend and then go into the filter plant.
So we've got a lot of activity. What's happening right now?
So right now what we're doing, we're testing this line. We do what we call a hydro test. What we're doing is testing each and every joint. There's so many joints in this line. We're testing them up for any leakage or deflections before we load the line with Seymour water in here.
Thank you so much for your time today. Yeah, these are great pipes.
Yeah, they are wonderful pipes, yes, as you can see.
So Vanessa, we turn off the Seymour source and we drain the upper pipe of the pipe for the tie-in. So that means people are without water. But we're able to provide them with water from the Capilano source by backpumping from Vancouver Heights Pump Station. However, there's an area in the Lynn Valley that can't get that water because the pumping power is not strong enough. So that's why we need this facility, which stores the Greenwood pump station, to pump it all the way up to Lynn Valley.
So once the pipe has arrived, how long does it take to do the tie-in?
The tie-in itself is going to take 10 days, and we're planning to start that in the next couple of days.
And how about the whole filtration plant? When is that going to be completed?
Well, the Seymour Capilano Filtration Plant itself is going to be completed by the end of the year. The twin tunnel that links the Capilano and the Seymour source is going to be completed in 2010.
And when completed, this will be the largest filtration plant in Canada and the largest ultraviolet treatment plant anywhere in the world. This has been great, Adeline. Thank you so much. Very interesting.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Welcome back to the Sustainable Region and our look at Metro Vancouver's waterways. The Murakami family commute was only a couple of steps from home to their boatworks. When it came time to launch the boats, tracks were laid across the boardwalk and the boats were rolled out. Next up, I take a tour of the region's Pitt River.
Welcome to the Pitt River. This is the point where it meets the Fraser. Up ahead of us, we have Coquitlam and Port Coquitlam. Right across from me there is Pitt Meadows. Today we're going to be touring the lower Pitt with Mike here from Forest Marine. We'll stop to talk with a few people along the way.
The river was likely named after William Pitt the Younger, Britain's Prime Minister in the early 1800s, which was when Europeans were first exploring this area. Many ice caps and streams in the Garibaldi Ranges feed the upper Pitt River system. Then it widens out to become the 28-kilometer-long Pitt Lake. The south end narrows again for the final 20 kilometers known as the lower Pitt River. The Outdoor Recreation Council named the Upper Pitt as BC's most endangered river in 2008 due to controversy over small hydro projects proposed for the area. But today, I am focusing on the lower Pitt River. It's a critical habitat corridor for fish and wildlife, linking the upper mountains with the Fraser River.
I'm talking with Nerez, who's with the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, and he's been working on this river for close to a decade and has a lot of knowledge about its different features. Nerez, can you tell us a little bit about the ecology of the river?
Sure. Basically, it's considered a rich, diverse ecosystem. It's got a lot of floral and fauna. The Pitt River itself supports white sturgeon, ulukin. In terms of, there's a lot of wetland, riparian vegetation habitat. 5 species of the Pacific salmon, they all spawn in the Pitt River before they migrate down into the main stem. If you go further up in the Pitt, there's a couple of wildlife management areas that are managed by Metro Vancouver. The Pitt River and the Fraser River are basically considered the fiber highways of the river. At times you'll see a lot of these tugboats bringing down barges of wood chips or even just aggregate material. Wave action caused by that can actually over time start impacting some of the intertidal habitat. So the log booms can act as a sort of a barrier to protecting some of that intertidal habitat.
What's the most significant challenge that you face in managing the lower Pitt?
Balancing the economic interests, the social interests, and the environmental interests. There's increased demand for recreational use along the dikes. It puts a lot of pressure on the existing industries that are here, and as it is right now, they're very scarce, especially in the Pitt River.
Thanks so much for sharing your experience with us today, Nerez.
My pleasure.
The low-heat highway crosses the Pitt River on the current 4-lane swing bridge, but a new 7-lane bridge will soon replace it. As we boated northward, I learned about life on the Pitt.
We're third generation here. The river is who we are. It's who I am. This is where we come from.
What are the kind of jobs that you do here on the river?
Well, we do all kinds of small boat type jobs. We'll do small log towing or various log towing. We'll do log sorting. We do log salvage and water taxi work. We are commercial fishing as well when it's allowed to be open for us.
So what about recreation? How do you see that develop over the next years?
Recreational traffic in the last 20 years has probably grown 100%. Water skiing, sea-doos, all kinds of watercraft, canoes at Grant's Landing. Recreational boating is a big thing and it's coming on more. We need to be handling it better.
I've stepped out to Pitt Meadows Municipal Hall to learn more about how the river has shaped the municipality. Hi, Dana.
Hi, Dagmar.
There's a lot of agricultural land here in the region. The river has something to do with that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Prior to European settlement, most of Pitt Meadows was really marshy and boggy, but the river provided a lot of the nutrients, and the land is quite fertile and rich for agricultural use. 86% of Pitt Meadows is within the floodplain, and it's also agricultural land.
So that large percentage of agricultural land, does that have an impact on how compact the urban core is?
Most of the development has to be concentrated in areas where there isn't floodplain, for the most part. We need to build up and not out in order to preserve the agricultural area and to build outside of the floodplain. The river also means that we have to travel to other parts of the Lower Mainland on bridges, which means that travel times are also significantly increased because of these bottlenecks.
There are 2 new bridges coming in. What impact will that have on Pitt Meadows?
It'll provide a new gateway to the municipality that just hadn't existed at all before, and therefore orient the municipality differently in the region. We can expect more demand for commercial development and residential as well, I think.
There are lots of other issues and activities on the Pitt River, but that's all we have time for today. For the Sustainable Region, I'm Dagmar Timmer.
Welcome back to the Sustainable Region and our look at regional waterways. Richmond's Britannia Heritage Shipyard is growing.
New renovations mean that soon more heritage buildings will be open to the public to explore the history of the Fraser River's working waterfront.
Working waterfronts must balance the needs of industry and the environment. When it comes to our port's air quality, the largest contributor of emissions is from ships entering and leaving.
The second contributor is from dockside machinery and equipment. Up next, initiatives to improve air quality around Metro Vancouver's ports.
Environmentally sensitive Burrard Inlet is both a marine habitat and a gateway to the world. 2,400 vessels visited the Port of Vancouver last year, bringing us trade and tourists, but polluting the air in the process. Low-grade diesel oil with a high sulfur content, as much as 45 parts per million, is particularly worrisome. So much so that the American Chemical Society blames sulfur emissions from ships for thousands of premature deaths.
I'm not in a position to state what the number of deaths might be and what the direct correlations are, but what I can tell you is that our industry is deeply concerned about the emissions from ships, and we're taking specific action to reduce them to the extent we can.
Rick Bryant represents the international shipping community in BC. His organization, the BC Chamber of Shipping, has just completed an inventory of ships visiting the port and the contaminants they emit: nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, and especially sulfur particulates.
Each ship that called in Vancouver, we surveyed them, we got specific information about their engine types, the fuel they used, and things like that. The world standard for shipping is that it should be less than 4.5% sulfur content in the fuel. The average of all the ships is about 2.7%. In fact, it's sort of centered on the 1.5% to 2% area, with the maximums being about 3%.
The Chamber will use these figures to create a baseline against which future air quality programs can be measured. But an emissions inventory is only part of the solution. The Vancouver Fraser Port Authority and its many partners are actively pursuing initiatives on land and sea. The Burrard Inlet Environmental Action Program, or BEEP, coordinates a joint action program to improve and protect the environmental quality of Burrard Inlet. BEEP uses environmental indicators to monitor how conditions may be changing over time. These are tree canopy cover, parks and protected areas, water bird abundance, water and sediment quality, recreational water quality, fecal coliforms, air quality and greenhouse gas emissions. The port's environmental program routinely patrols the harbor, but they have no jurisdiction once those ships leave Vancouver. So the port and its partners are developing common strategies that can be applied to all the ports up and down the coast.
In May of this year, we actually developed a Northwest Ports Clean Air Strategy with the Port of Seattle, the Port of Tacoma, to develop ways that we can work together to reduce air emissions in the Puget Sound, Georgia Basin airshed.
A trip around the inlet reveals one part of its strategy: working with local terminals to minimize pollution from shore-based operations.
In the Port of Vancouver, each and every ship-to-shore gantry crane is actually powered with hydroelectric power. And in the case of these cranes, when they're actually lowering the container back down either to the ship or onto the terminal, it's actually generating power back into the grid.
Inside the terminal, vehicles run on low sulfur fuel, or biodiesel. Trucks are required to stop idling if they're standing still for a minute or two. And Vancouver's testing a new kind of hybrid RTG, or rubber-tired gantry, to move containers on and off trucks.
The old RTGs have a big diesel engine directly powering DC motors. The hybrid RTG has a small diesel engine that charges a battery, and the battery powers the DC motors. So whenever the RTG is sitting there doing nothing, the engine shuts itself off. The long-term plan is to have all 50 or so RTGs at Van Term and Deltaport switched over to hybrid power plants.
But it's the ocean-going ships that remain the port's biggest concern. Cruise ships in Seattle plug into a shore-based power grid to minimize their oil consumption. A shore-based power grid is coming here, too. And another initiative. The Port of Vancouver will reduce its harbor fees if ships use environmentally friendly fuels. Approximately 30% of them do.
The shipping companies say, well, look, make it so that everybody is burning the same fuel and then it's a level playing field. And that's one of the things we're looking at, is actually having a standard fuel requirement. And we're actually doing that in consultation with the Port of Seattle and Port of Tacoma and our stakeholders here in British Columbia.
So we have have the case.
Back in his office, Rick Bryant says newer, fuel-efficient ships will reduce emissions, even as trade grows.
Because the bigger ships are more efficient, we would then expect at least to drop to this line here as a result of the bigger ships.
But the real change in air quality will come about from legislation initiated by the International Maritime Organization, or IMO.
If you then put on top of that a reduction in the NOx emissions, you can see that it holds fairly close to common. And then if we sum them all up, you get this yellow line, and they'll drop to less than half of what they are today.
This rosy prognosis depends upon international consensus and patience. Bryant doesn't expect to see these regulations in place until 2016. But he says it will happen, driven by public pressure and a desire by the shipping industry to escape bad press.
Our industry is being labeled as a source of these pollutants, and the industry doesn't want to be in that position. They want to have sustainable shipping that can operate around the world and not be seen as a contributor to these things.
We hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. And did you know that past episodes are available at the library?
You can look us up in the catalog under The Sustainable Region.
Let us know what you think about today's episode or suggest some story ideas.
You can phone us at 604-436-6794 or email us at sustainableregion@metrovancouver.org.
For the Sustainable Region, I'm Vanessa Timmer.
And I'm Dagmar Timmer. See you next time.